Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Debbie Qaqish with the Pedowitz Group, and I want to welcome you all to this webinar. Today, we're here to talk about one of the most important questions that every marketer needs to be asking, and that is, who owns the customer? So let's take a look at how we're actually going to get all this done today. I'm joined by our VP of Sales, Scott Beneditti. Scott, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, Scott. I'm the VP of Sales at the Pedowitz Group. Debbie and I have been working together for 9 years, and we're excited to have this topic today.
Absolutely. And again, as the Chief Strategy Officer for the Pedowitz Group, it's my job to go out into the market and ask fascinating questions like this. Who owns the customer? Who owns the customer journey? Well, we're going to find out about that today. Let me share with you the agenda and a little bit more about this webinar. The agenda is I'll present a problem, and the problem is nobody really owns the customer journey, and that's an issue. We'll have a debate between Scott and I. We'll provide you an answer that you may or may not expect, and then provide a few next steps around what you can do to really get that customer journey mapped and operational in your organization. I'm very pleased to say that this webinar today, Who Owns the Customer Journey, is part of a whole series that we're putting together around the customer because, again, it's so important to marketers today. This is recorded. It is interactive. Please put all your questions into the question box. We'll be recording all of those, and if we don't get all of your answers today during the webinar, because it is only 30 minutes, we will be providing a blog that has all the answers to all of the questions. And we're very excited to have you here today because we really want to help establish key learnings to help address this very, very important issue. But Scott, don't we have a question for this group?
Let's find out who's paying attention, Debbie. Who owns the customer journey in your organization? Michelle, why don't you pop up that poll question? You guys can go ahead and select your entry. When you take a look at your org, who owns the customer?
So Scott, what do you think? What do you think the majority of people are going to answer on this one?
I'm going to guess that marketing is going to take the selection because I think we primarily have marketers in attendance as I look down the attendee list.
I think that's probably true, and I also bet if we had mostly salespeople on this call, I bet you it would mostly be salespeople. Oh,
Absolutely.
Let's take a look. So we have 18% for sales right now, 53% for marketing. Oh my goodness, we have 12% for services. That is really interesting. And we have 18%, 17% now for other. Let's leave this open for just another few seconds.
Yeah, and for you folks that answered other, or if you have some other opinion, go ahead and enter that in the chat window. We can use that as part of our discussion and part of the data that we aggregate at the end of this, and we'll send it all back out to you.
We would love to see that. I've even seen operations. I've seen the customer journey, customer relationship mapping go up into the office of the COO, and I've actually seen it owned by the operations piece of the organization. Wow, this is super interesting. Okay, we're going to close the poll because we're a little at over a minute, but wow, the polling questions are fascinating. So we ended up with 21% saying sales. We ended up with 47% saying marketing, 11% saying services, and we had 21% saying other. Wow, who is this other that we're talking about? Let's see. I'm seeing, did we see any other answers, Michelle?
I don't see anything in the chat. Cheryl says everyone. Diane says,
that's a good one.
We all own the customer, sales, marketing, and services. Ashley says she agrees it's a shared responsibility between sales, marketing, operations, and relationship management.
I think those are all great answers. Well, let's take a look at the problem, and then Scott and I are going to kind of have this debate around, of all the people and all the functions in the organization, who owns it. So in this section, I'll talk about how digital has changed how we all experience the world. I'll talk about how B2B customers expect a B2C experience, and I'll talk about how customer experience pays off, yet marketing is not prepared to lead. So let's take a look at this problem. So our world has changed. I don't care if you're 19 and you're on the phone call or if you're 60 plus and you're on the phone call. How we experience our world has changed thanks to technology and digital technology. We don't go into a store to buy a CD. We have Spotify. We can get any song on the planet anytime that we want to. We don't hail cabs anymore. We call for a Lyft or we call for an Uber. We don't go grocery shopping anymore. I mean, this is one of the things that I love so much. You can just put a little Tide to Go button on your washing machine and you just press that button and the next day Tide is delivered to your house. We don't stand in line, not if you're smart. You get that order for your Starbucks coffee in advance and then you just go in and pick it up. You can even do this at McDonald's today. We also don't sit in meetings as we used to. We used to remember the days when people brought in pen and paper and we wrote everything down. Now there's every device imaginable and people are sitting there taking notes, hopefully participating, but more often than not, checking other things on their phone. I call phones life devices now. And think about something as simple as contracts. We used to have to physically sign these contracts and then send them in the mail or fax them or some ridiculous way like that. Now we do everything electronically. Billions and billions of contracts are executed every day, all through digital means. But the single best thing that digital technology can give us, and I love this sign that says, I won't be impressed with technology until I can download a beer app. So I would agree with that. But all things being equal, and seriously, our world has changed forever because of digital technology. And because we as consumers have experienced a new way to interact with technology to make our lives easier, we now expect from a B2B perspective to have that same kind of experience. And I love this quote from Jerry Grigori, who was the former CIO of Dell. He said, the customer experience is the next competitive battleground. It's where business is going to be won and lost. And I absolutely 100% believe that. B2B companies these days are struggling because the day of being product-centric, of being service-centric, those days are numbered. Our customers are forcing us to pivot into this customer first mentality. And without that, we are absolutely positively going to lose. There is a ton of money that's being thrown at the digital customer experience. Just take a look at these numbers. By 2018, Gartner predicts, that's this year, by the way, more than 50% of organizations will redirect their investments to customer experience innovations. And then another quote, by 2020, and this is important, especially for you marketers who work for companies that are all about the product, customer experience will overtake price and product as the brand differentiator. And why not? Studies prove, both academic studies and business studies prove, that customer experience pays. Take a look at the graphic on the right. It says, why do we want to improve CX? Well, how about a 42% increase in customer retention? How about a 33% increase in customer satisfaction? And how about a 32% increase in cross-selling and upselling? There is data, and there is no reason not to be taking a customer-first strategy and approach in the world that we live in today. So even with all of this evidence, all of this talk, everything that has been studied and written about customer experience, I think that close to 98.7% of all firms cannot answer one simple question, and that is, who owns the customer journey? Now, on our poll, it was clear that many of you thought it should be a shared responsibility, and it should be a shared responsibility, but somebody has to lead. Somebody has to own that customer journey. Somebody has to orchestrate. So what Scott and I thought we would do is that we would have a little debate. And you know, if you if you talk to sales, sales will tell you they own the customer. If you talk to marketing, marketing will tell you they own the customer. So what do you think, Scott? Does sales own the customer?
Well, when I take this position, I do think that sales owns the customer because we're, responsible for the revenue number when it comes to the acquisition side of the house. We're the people that are out there. We own it whether marketing generates revenue or contribution from a leads perspective or not. We own the relationship. We're talking to the folks, where they say the rubber meets the road, and we understand what the customer is trying to accomplish when it comes to selling our solutions. So I think on the basis, just at the outset, because we work directly with the customer, we have direct feedback, the fact that we own the revenue number and the pressure to achieve things like quota, and we own the relationship, that sales owns the customer.
Well, let me give a counterpoint to that. And while I think you make excellent points, I do think the thing that has changed drastically, Scott, is that we no longer work and live in a face-to-face world. We live in the digital world. And because we now live in the digital world, it's really up to marketing to engage with the customer digitally, which, by the way, is the way that they want to engage. We've all heard the statistics. Customers are 70% or further into their buyer journey before sales even has an inkling that there is an opportunity. So in that way, it's really up to marketing to engage these customers where they are, which is in the digital world. And Scott, in case you have forgotten, marketing also now owns a number. Go ahead and put in the chat window if you actually own a revenue number in marketing. I'd love to see some thoughts on that. The B2B companies that we work with, the CMO is absolutely responsible for a number, and we're also responsible for helping marketing achieve their number. And this is not fuzzy math. This is very, very direct contribution. And finally, I think that marketing is in a better position to see the truths across the entire journey. Number one, because digital does not lie. Digital body language is a truer indicator of what a prospect or a customer is thinking or feeling. Plus, also, I think marketing is in a better position to see the entire customer journey. So I think marketing should own it, Scott.
Well, I tend to understand what you're saying, but when I'm out there speaking to the people that we're trying to acquire as customers, some of which I hope are on the call or will pick up the deck afterwards, they're having the same conundrum, right? And sales and marketing don't speak to each other at the level that you described. And while marketing is doing a great job of, blasting out emails and putting out content, it doesn't necessarily come through as an ownership perspective. It comes through more as an engagement perspective. And well, that was their job the whole time anyway. Aren't they there to support sales?
But I think you forget, in this digital age that we live in, we have data about customers. We have data about what they're doing. We have data about how they engage. We have data that is predictive of how they will engage with us and how much they'll actually buy from us. So I think marketing has moved past engagement, or at least engagement just for the sake of engagement, and are engaging to be predictive of how they will interact with our company. So maybe it's a little bit of both, Scott?
Debbie, I think that the science doesn't lie. And if you're collecting the right data, you can certainly make the case for that. But I think we had some folks that when they responded to the poll, they said sales, they said marketing, they said services. And I think next time we do this topic, we'll invite a services person. What do you think the answer is, Deb?
I think we got it right here. Your customer owns their journey and has the power. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, I think so. And you said it, you made a point earlier, B2B marketers are trying to establish a B2C experience. And so, in that case, when you watch the journey of a customer, they're all over the place in B2C, right? They're comparing, they're shopping, they're looking at reviews, and then finally they make that purchase. And, I think it's a large percentage of the time through Amazon from what I hear, but at the end of the day, that is the truth, right? And that's their expectation from an ownership perspective. I think it's up to us as salespeople and as marketers and as leaders in the space to figure out how we best quantify it, how we measure it, and then how we communicate with those folks. And I think this next, this next section will talk about how we get to that space.
And Scott, I just want to make one more point, just to build off of what you just said. It's very important that everyone listening understand these words. Your customer owns the journey and they have the power. B2B companies are literally being forced to pay attention to the customer in a way that they never have before. And my peers in marketing have known this for a while. I think salespeople, live and breathe customer first to begin with, but it really takes all of us. It takes a village to really understand that entire customer journey. So something that we did recently at the Pedowitz Group is we were thinking about this customer journey, and as many of you had indicated, we're really all responsible for executing one view of the customer journey. And so we like to put it in an infinity loop. And there's all kinds of representations of the customer journey, but the reason we like the loop is because it really is kind of a continuous thing. And so we see it as being holistic. And when you take a look at the customer journey like this entire left side, right side, and kind of as a continuous relationship, it really makes you think a little differently about what happens, how it happens, and who does what. So if you take a look at this model on the left in green, that's all about customer acquisition. The blue area on the right is really all about customer expansion. Together, it represents a holistic model from a customer perspective. These are the steps that they go through when they are engaging with your company. Below the line, in each of the stages, you're going to see, you will want to be thinking about a few things. What does your customer want out of that stage? Not what do you want to do to them, but what do they want out of that stage? What do you need to do to support the customer goals at that stage? Who in your company does it? Using what tools and what key metrics will you need to report on? One of my favorite academic models is this thing called market orientation. And basically it says this. A firm has a market orientation when they have a firm-wide capability to sense and respond in almost real time to changes in the customer. So that takes them into account every single stage that we have here. Why don't you give us a little bit more detail around this view of the customer journey, Scott?
Yeah, so I appreciate you setting the green versus the blue. What we see in the market, what we experience here is that one of the most difficult things is to go discover those net new folks that have a need or are searching for a potential need, that our product solves. And so once we capture those folks, once they've actually entered some information and confirmed that interest, whether it be through engaging through content or through search phrases or social, a live interaction, a trade event, any of the various marketing efforts, then they have become aware of the problem, and then it's up to marketing and sales in collaboration to go through the following steps: make them aware of the potential solution, make them aware of the level of pain that problem solves, and ultimately determine whether or not they should become, in what most sales circles call, an opportunity. That's where they're actually considering a potential purchase. And that's where I really think sales has to manage expectations, but still communicate with marketing from the consideration or evaluation to ultimately the decision. And understand that I think we've really made this as generic as possible so that folks like those that are in attendance can customize it towards their own company. But I found out, more importantly, that it's less expensive to grow an existing customer or to renew an existing customer if you've established the best experience possible all the way back at number one. So once you've made that sale, obviously it moves over into some level of service or delivery or onboarding, all depending on what your product is or what it does. And then there's a level of usage or adoption, as you've described here in step 2 in the blue. Value realization, that's something I think folks don't typically identify. But as marketers and as salespeople or service delivery people, we can re-emphasize the fact that this person has realized the value from that step. After that, it's product loyalty. Think back to the B2C side of the world and think about, you immediately look for the reviews. How many stars did you get on the product or the service that you're delivering? And that is going to indicate whether or not that person is going to be loyal to that product and whether or not they're going to renew, what their potential is for upsell or cross-sell. And then, I think the golden egg, so to speak, is advocacy, because that's the point where you've got a customer who's actually actively getting you customers. And that brings them all the way back to, hey, they brought in a net new lead, somebody that was unaware of what it is that you do or what it is that your products do. So I think this is an opportunity to begin to define, one, how you engage from marketing, sales, and services perspective. Two, where does the data live that you can use to do that analysis and ultimately be able to contribute and utilize technologies like predictive or automatic, delivery of content, right? What is the next best piece of content? What is the next best offer to present to that person? So I think this is just a generic way to allow people to begin to map that customer journey and establish ownership.
And what's so valuable about this is it's both sides. Quite often marketing just kind of takes a look at the customer acquisition and just forgets about the customer expansion part. But here's what I'll say. Study after study after study shows the company that leads with a customer-first strategy and can execute one view of the customer that creates a cohesive, interwoven journey that is free of pain and free of friction, and helps that client make that next decision. Those are the companies who are going to win in our digital world. Now, with that said, we wanted to leave you with a few next steps. And some of these things may seem readily apparent to you, but each of them are very important. And I've been doing customer journey work since 1995. And so some of these things have a whole lot of experience behind it. I think the first thing is you need to know your stuff as marketing, and you need to get intentional. And you can't get intentional if you're living in a silo, if you don't really understand that entire customer journey. So you really have to get educated on that broader view of the customer journey.
Yeah, Deb, and I think the next thing you got to do is actually listen to the client. To your point of being siloed, I did a piece that was published on having marketing getting out in the field with sales. And getting face-to-face with the customer, or just call up customers, or call up, do a win-loss analysis and utilize marketing to go out there and speak to those customers to try and understand what were the points in their journey. Where did you win or fall down? Remember, customer experience is that what you're trying to figure out, right?
Yeah, and I think it's shameful how few B2B customers actually talk to the customer. The next is journey mapping. Customer journey success is a team sport. You have to build alliances across functions, and you need to also begin to, create your map and run pilots or experiments. Not everything has to be an either or. And then, of course, you have to implement. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you do have to get started. And then your last one is you have to continuously optimize, and this should be on here and it's not, but the data, you've got to get that one source of truth for data, whether you're going to bring it in from all different places, because only then can you have that one holistic view of the customer journey. So we have about 4 minutes left, and I think we had a few questions. Michelle, what kind of questions did we have?
Yeah, we have 2 questions so far, and the first is a great one that comes from Jahan, and that is, describe the difference of who owns the journey and who is responsible for it. And he says, I agree, customer owns it, but marketing is ultimately responsible for the journey's life cycle.
So Scott, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think you've really pointed out part of the problem, and part of the problem that we're posing here. No one has taken on accountability for the overall customer experience. When we do the research through the big analysts, we don't find anyone that has taken on executive responsibility of who owns the entire customer experience. And in forward-thinking organizations, I think they're fighting to take that responsibility. Marketing wants to have it in some cases. Other times it's sales, and other times they're actually looking to bring those two people together with a CXO or a customer experience executive and investments in that area. So I agree, and thank you for the question, but I think somebody has to actually assign accountability from the top.
I agree with that. And one of the things that we're seeing is that we are seeing when the CEO understands that this is a strategic shift for their organization, not just talking about a bunch of stuff, but it is actually a strategic shift. Quite often the CMO will take on a chief customer officer type of accountability. But in some companies, I'm actually seeing some interesting reorganization so that the company can truly focus on the customer. So one small company that I work with took sales operations, marketing operations, and customer success operations, combined them together. There was a head, and that the head was in charge of that, and his job was one view of the customer, and he reported to the chief operating officer of their organization. Only through that reorganization were they able to truly get that one view of the customer and to create a consistent journey that the customer wanted to have across the organization. We have time for one more question, Michelle. Michelle?
Hi there. We have one more question from Cheryl, and that is, so if the customer owns the customer journey, who owns the greatest influence on their journey?
Ooh, Scott, why don't you take that one, and then I'll give you a final response.
Well, I think that it was answered earlier in one of the inputs to the text, but everybody has final responsibility, and it's a matter of how you measure customer satisfaction overall. From the first point of communication, whether that be they see a digital ad or some other media placement, that begins the customer experience. From there all the way through to their first touch with a live person, whether that is inside sales or a telemarketing or telequalification group, right through the additional content that they research. It is all going to be considered part of the competitive experience of the customer journey, all the way through back to services. And that is ultimately, I think, nirvana for where people are trying to get to.
Well, I agree with that, Scott. And with that, we are out of time. It has been a pleasure to be with everyone today. This will be posted on our website. This will be sent out as a link to all of the participants, and also the slides will be available. Thank you, and we look forward to having you in our next session around who owns the customer journey. Thanks, and have a great afternoon.
Take care, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.